Welcome, travelers, to my realm of nightmares. Allow me to be your personal assistant. Come in, take a seat, get comfortable. For when you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.
It took a moment for my memories to flood back into my mind. For a moment, I simply existed. There was no thought, no desire, only the steady pulse in my heart and the pain in my consciousness. Each throb of my head sent a shockwave through my body that kick-started each of my nerves with concentric waves of agony that pushed ever outward. My head was the epicenter. Each of my senses came to life one by one. My sight focused, and I saw the blaring patterns of the code flashing across the screen. Each loud eruption of color causing the fatigue vice fastened onto my head to tighten more and more. I tasted blood, and I felt the rush of heat spread across my face, as if I'd been doused in liquid sunlight. Air coursing through my nose, and wind passage began to burn. The blaring of the emergency sirens began like the gentle striking of a wind chime, and grew steadily louder until it was the iron strike with violent prejudice in the forge of my mind. The human body, despite all of the wonders that science had brought to man within the past century or so, remains the most advanced construct in nature. Instinct took over as all my senses were reaching 100% reboot, and my subconscious began to take stock of everything. What I knew, who I was, how many fingers I was supposed to have, how many did I currently possess, etc. After a minute or two, time seems to run together in space. I began to piece everything together. Only things weren't as I initially thought. What I had initially thought as a code flashing across the screen was just an old film I'd left running while I fell asleep. At least, I suppose I must have. I thought I had a work shift the previous night, didn't I? I rose from my bed, my head protesting the motion with every minute motion on my body as I got to my feet. Each step that followed wasn't any better, my head ringing like a bell, chasing any semblance of thought out before I had time to form a coherent thought. I allowed instinct to take over, leading me to my terminal across the room and dropping me into the chair in front of it as if the artificial gravity doubled for a second. My desk shook and I dropped into it, which in turn caused the amber bottles to drop from its surface. I examined the bottles absently. Hooch. The good stuff at that. Never cared for the stuff. Never cared for old movies either. But I guess the loneliness of being the only crewmate not presently in hypersleep must be getting to me. The terminal blinked on, and a crude computer voice greeted me. "Good morning, Captain Ulysses Septim Austin." I found myself reflexively covering my ears. The discomfort in my head seemed to shift a little as I did so. "Turn off vocal interface," I grunted. The machine chirped in acknowledgement, and after a moment of collecting myself, I ran diagnostics of the ship. A three-dimensional model of the USS Kigori appeared before me. All the important life support systems showed to be working at optimal capacity. Good. I love it when work starts off on the right foot. Speaking of work, I should probably check the logs for the previous day. My head was in such a fog, presumably from the hooch, that I could only vaguely recall running through my daily checklist the day before. There was a knock at my door, and my train of thought scattered like roaches when you flicked the kitchen light on. If there was a good thing about leaving Earth behind, it was never having to see a roach as long as I lived. The door opened automatically with a whoosh, revealing a young cadet behind it. The boy must have been a new recruit when he left Earth. He was young, thin, and had the look on his face that said, "I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I hope you can tell me." He straightened and saluted. "Captain Austin, sir." "At ease," I said, trying to hide my hangover. Suddenly a question dawned on me. What are you?" As if anticipating my thought, the cadet spoke up before I could articulate my question. "I awoke just an hour ago, sir. My itinerary stated that I was to relieve you of your duties." Relief of duty? This early? Actually, how long had it been since I'd relieved the previous crewmate? Without a day or night cycle, time lost all meaning. I might have woken up a month ago or a year ago, and it would feel like the same amount of time, to be honest. "What day is it?" I asked hoarsely. Per my wake-up sequence, today is August 4th, 4852. August 4th? That must have been some good hooch. Last I checked, it was May. That seemed wrong somehow. I turned to my terminal, clicking through the system tabs once more. We had detected a small exoplanet when the Commander Corps had last been awoken at the same time. We had opted to drop in and allow the Kagori to restock on essential minerals like iron, mercury, and water. Our tanks had last displayed 75% for water, but given that we carried the last remnants of humanity in deep freeze, we decided that it was better safe than sorry. All minerals read 100%, meaning that we must have stopped for that restock. But, "Captain," the cadet asked. I found myself on my feet. "Right, training." I moved past the cadet, moving towards step 1 in a long list of tasks that I would have to teach him. There was no way we could cover it all in one day, but we could do enough that he'd be able to take over and figure out the rest on his own. My eyes felt as if they were on fire, and my bones ached to the core. I must be tired. Weariness can do a nasty number on the mind, and when paired with months of isolation, it was logical. Still, I had to be sure. I focused my attention and summoned the avatar of the ship's computer. "Wake up, Z," I said in my mind. I felt the implant in my brain spark into action, pulsing with a gentle hum that made my headache pound once more. The avatar, Zeta Brain, or Z for short, sparked to life before my vision, an array of vectors and polygons, weaving together to form a more intricate and complex shape until she was indistinguishable from a living human, with the exception of the neon green aura constantly surrounding her. Her skin, like the aura surrounding her, was a shade of green. She had long hair, which was neatly held in a bun atop her head. She had soft, pouty lips and a round face that gave her a young intern look. She was arrayed in the uniform of the United Earth Research Corps. She was stunning to look at, and I often wondered if the team tasked with designing her wasn't every bit as lonely as I was these past few months. In every aspect, Z was as real as one could imagine or believe. The only thing that broke the illusion of life was her eyes, which were just about as cold as the void in which we traveled. Her eyes, a green, the color of rubbing alcohol, were always fixed on me, but somehow never truly seeing me. I tried not to make eye contact with her for more than a few seconds at a time, otherwise that soulless stare felt too alien to confront. Zetabrain program on. User profile Captain Austin. Loading interface. Diagnostics Z. Oh, there was that annoying startup sequence before Z's program was loaded. The empty-eyed bombshell of an intern spoke with a soft tenor of gears that had been running on Sen's oil for a few dozen light years. "Captain Austin, how may I be of service, sir?" said the previous robotic hologram with the voice of a fresh graduate with aspirations of padding her resume with time and service. "Good morning, Z. Run a vitals check on the crew, Vitals check is complete. she interrupted. Captain, the cadet asked, his voice sounding slightly muffled to me. I pretended not to hear him and asked Z to display the results of the check. The results flashed across my vision. I stopped dead in my tracks, the cadet bumping into me from behind, though I barely registered the impact. 30% of crew vitals were in the red, critical condition or worse. Without a second thought, I broke into a dead run, fighting to ignore every ache and protest in my body as I made my way to the stasis chamber. There must have been some manner of system failure in the life support system, but how could that be right? When I checked in on my terminal a minute ago, it showed all green. I reached a lift and practically shouted for the system to take me down to the stasis pods. The door lift slid shut, and I felt my stomach drop as it began to move. "What's the matter, Captain?" the cadet asked. "Something is wrong with the stasis chamber," I said. "Some of the crew is still alive, but their vitals are dropping fast. We can't waste any time." "Captain, I just came from the stasis chamber. Every system displayed no malfunction," the cadet replied. "I know. It was all green when I checked it a while ago. Also, I don't understand." The lift stopped suddenly, and I sprinted in without missing a beat. Every pod, as far as the eye could see, displayed no malfunction on the display consoles at their sides. I continued running until I reached the center control system and ran a diagnostics check. Petabytes of information ran in just under a minute, measuring the heart rates, blood pressure, and other miscellaneous vital signs for every last remaining human. I could feel my heart and my head pounding as if trying to outperform each other. "That can't be right," I said, as the final check displayed all systems green. Every person in stasis showed stable life signatures. "Z," I called. "Verify vitals." Z appeared before me, and her vision went vacant as she ran a second vitals check. "Warning," she said. "Current crew members show to be under extreme physical duress. Immediate action is advised." "Show me a list," I shouted. Z displayed a list of over 1 million names and ID numbers, each of which was supposedly a person whose vitals were either rapidly declining or had expired. At a glance, I gathered the numbers closest to my present location and started checking each one by one. Alpha Bay, 4000. A science officer, vitals, normal. Alpha Bay, 3024. An architect, vitals, normal. Alpha Bay, 4003. A xenobiologist, vitals, normal. On and on, each one showed normal, no sign of vitals dropping for even a second of the past 10 years of the voyage. But Z displayed each one in critical condition. The pounding in my head and chest reached a point that I felt like I should collapse, but somehow... "Slow down, Captain," the cadet ran up, apparently having chased me all through the stasis chamber. Z appeared before me and placed a hand on my shoulder in a concerned way. "Captain, your heart rate is reaching dangerous levels. Additionally, you appear to have several punctured injuries that could become infected if left untreated." "What?" I said. "Z, you're not making any sense. All the vital readings show normal on the pods." But then again, I could feel my heart hammering as she noted. The cadet approached me cautiously, a look of concern on his face. "Captain? Who are you talking to?" "Z, cadet. I think she might be malfunctioning. She's showing faulty readings that..." I stopped mid-sentence. What the hell did he mean by, "Who am I talking to?" In order to make it possible for one crewmate to maintain all of Kagori alone, while the rest remained in stasis, it was required for them to receive a Zeta brain implant, along with other physical augmentations. Z, therefore, was a phantom AI, visible and audible to all who possessed the implant. "What did you say your name was, cadet?" The cadet took a moment to answer. A long moment. Too long. His expression went blank, almost as Z did when running a query. I am, he started, then trailed off. What's your ID, soldier? I pressed. Again, he seemed to go blank. Z, identify cadet before me. Z spoke up almost immediately. Error, Captain. You are the only person presently not in stasis. The cadet seemed to blur and glitch before my eyes, almost as if he was phasing in and out of existence intermediately. Z, show me a full scan of my vitals. Z wove a model of my body before my eyes and highlighted several problem areas in bright pulsing red. My body had suffered injuries by some manner of blunt force trauma. Signs of it were evident. A nasty-looking puncture appeared to be on the right side of my head, right where the pounding in my head was the worst. I recalled the flashing of emergency colors, recalled the blaring of sirens, becoming aware, accurately aware, of the pain that had been coursing through my body. I felt myself sweating. No, it wasn't sweat. It was sticky, hot. Blood? There was no sign of damage on me. However, no blood, no bruising, no cuts. It was as if the impact, the pain, had all been a dream, and yet I was not convinced that the case was such. I held Z with my mind, and she appeared before me. Z, focus on my right ear, I said, feeling a lump in my throat. The wireframe hologram of my body rotated and zoomed in on my ear. My brain appeared swollen on the scan. A cut was highlighted on my head near my temple. Signs of bruising were evident on the side of my head where the cut was, down my neck, shoulder, and right side. All signs pointed to my body being physically slammed onto its side. I examined it further, and the scan continued rendering, showing signs of trauma, as if something had forcibly inserted itself into my ear canal. My heart hammered against my chest, harder than ever. If I didn't do something soon, I was likely to fall into cardiac arrest. With a thought, I ran through a series of commands that had been programmed into Z for the event that a crewmate was injured on the vessel and needed to be resurrected emergency style with a sudden violent use of force. Zetabrain, emergency medical resurrection protocol ready. Enter password, said Z. I spoke aloud, clear and resolute. Clear. If the illumination of Christmas lights could be used to describe a sensation, it was the feeling of 1700 volts of electricity firing through the central nervous system. I felt my body spasm, hard, as if being jolted awake. All of the pain I had felt previously coming into hard focus, as if I had been slightly numb to it before, or like I'd been feeling it in a dream. My body felt heavy all of a sudden, the weight of it very real, as opposed to a moment before, where all the sensations, with the exception of the ache in my head, felt dull and distant. I realized I was on the bridge. I had been this whole time. With the sudden and painful return of all my senses, the feeling of an alien creature's sharp, barbed, fallacies in my ear, warping my mind, was one of immense pain and discomfort. I jerked my head away out of reflex, something I wish I had done more delicately, given the sheer damage it did to my own ear from the motion. Still, the pain of a ruptured eardrum and nasty lacerations all along the inside of my ear canal, though awful, was nothing compared to the feeling of having one's mind probed in any way other than delightful banter and a back-and-forth test of wits. The alien, annoyed that I was less than willing to its advances, unleashed a shriek that sounded vaguely like nails dragging across the chalkboard. It was a lucky thing that I was currently half deaf, otherwise that noise would have certainly floored me. Using what strength had returned to me, I freed my right arm from the vice grip of that thing's monstrous, hand? Was a generous way of describing the appendage that held me pinned to the floor. It was more like the mouth of a Venus flytrap, if it was made of iron and seaweed. I fired my free arm like a javelin, hand open and tight like a spear tip, and plunged it deep into what I perceived was the monster's eye. I managed to get about elbow deep in my strike, And the thing repeated the nails on the chalkboard scream, an octave higher than before, which was fine by me, as if it went any higher, I'd be free of danger and becoming completely deaf though. Dogs might still fall victim to the effects of this shriek. "Doesn't feel too good, does it, you bastard?" I said with a chuckle. I've been wanting company in the long months of being awake, but this wasn't what I had in mind. Inside the creature's eye, I began to flex my hand at an opening and closing motion, not knowing what I was looking for, but happy to be hurting that ugly son of a gun as much as I could. As luck would have it, my hand closed on something that felt like a length of rope, wound tight. Holding on for dear life, I pulled as hard as I could, taking the length of what I assumed was nerve tissue, the thickness of electrical cord, out of the alien's skull. The creature collapsed as if gravity suddenly affected it tenfold. It took longer to raise to my feet than I was comfortable with. My mind was racing with paranoia, previously aimed at my crew, but now locked onto an unidentified life form that was not opposed to playing mind games of the literal variety. I sent a series of commands to Z as I rose to my feet. My balance shot from the damage to my ear. Displays appeared in front of me, and Z reconfigured my suit, whose defibrillator had shocked me awake, to compensate for my lack of balance by reinforcing several proto-tendons the suit was built from. Each tendon was weaved such that it could strengthen or lessen pressure on a weaver's body, as needed given the potential change in atmosphere on different planets that the crew might venture off to. Now the tendons were being rewritten to adjust with my motion to offset any problem with balance. I glanced at the data Z had arranged on my display and nearly fell on my ass in horror. Though the crew's vitals had shown normal upon my previous inquiries, my updated parameters showed me exactly what I had feared. 30% of the crew's vitals were in critical condition, with some having flatlined. Other percentages seemed to imply that whatever was causing the physical distress had moved on to the others. My mind became dimly aware of the emergency sirens. Now that my life was no longer in immediate peril, I asked Z if emergency protocols had been enacted, as the reality of the threat had been assessed. Threat detection systems are now becoming aware of an assault on the crew of the Kagori by an unknown lifeform. Captain, it appears that the creatures were native lifeforms from the exoplanet that the ship was stocked at, she said. Sentinels were said to be roused from stasis as of 10 minutes ago. My systems show they have reached the armory and have begun to arm themselves. With a thought, she unlocked the weapon bay on the bridge. I took a pulse rifle, a plasma knife, and a neat little number that resembled an old-school taser. If those could fire a bolt of lightning. Looking up, I said a quiet prayer and hoped that we were high enough in the heavens that it would be heard sooner rather than later. Z, patch me to the sentinels on our comms. Before I articulated the command, several windows appeared in my field of vision, each holding the face of one of the sentinels, as if I was looking at each of them through port windows on the side of a passenger vessel. Captain, a man said. I recognized as Colton Dallas from United Earth Defense. What the hell is going on? I had no way of explaining. How could I summarize it in any way to make it credible? Listen up, men. We seem to have picked up some stowaways on our last stop. One just nearly lobotomized me on the bridge. Alien? Asked another man that I did not recognize. As I live and bleed, I replied. You mean breathe, Captain? Said the man I did not recognize. Annoyed, I replied, I mean exactly what the hell I said, man. Now, arm yourselves, and everyone don the space helmets. It looks like these things like to hijack your minds through your... One of the sentinels started screaming before I could finish my thought. All the others turned their windows to look in the direction of the screaming soldier, each head facing a different way, based on where they were standing in relation to the screaming man. My eye was drawn to the window where the soldier bellowed for dear life as something dark and slimy shot upward from inside his pressure suit, bulging the otherwise skin-tight network of proto-tendons. A dark tendril shot out of the man's suit at the shoulder, and like a length of steel wire possessed, plunged itself into his ear, deep, lobotomy deep. His eyes rolled into the back of his head, and his mouth dropped open. Black tendrils dropping from his mouth. The other men began to scream, but somehow I could not hear them. My sight was so loud that it was drowning out my ears. What happened next was so quick that it's difficult to explain. Whatever parasite had clung to the now dead sentinel began to feed on his organic material fast. Within seconds, the once youthful face of the soldier withered and dried until only rags of flesh remained. Soon enough, even that was consumed. From what little I could make out from my display, the other men sprang into action and grabbed a space helmet and forced it on the victim's head, thereby preventing all possibility of escape for the alien creature or their fallen ally. Commands were shouted that I could not hear. It wasn't until days later, looking back, that I came to the conclusion that Colton Dallas must have warned his team about his plans to open an air hatch and cast the thing out of the ship. The men sprung to action, each doing their part, Mr. Dallas presumably lifting the thing onto his shoulders, threw it in an airlock and pressed the release, throwing the lifeless corpse and its inhuman assassin into the empty void. I took a few steps to the viewfinder on the bridge. The corpse floated by, weightlessly, limp, dead. I looked after it in disbelief for a long while, thinking about how that could have just as easily been me, if I had delayed any longer. As the corpse drifted further away, perhaps by illusion brought on by weightlessness, I thought I saw the body hold as it spun upright and faced me. Through the cracked glass of my visor helmet, I could see the skeleton of what only a minute before was a man. One of my men. I swear for a moment, it looked as if it raised its hand towards me, calling for me to come to his rescue, but it was too late for him. I stood there, frozen by the feeling of fear one has when they wake from a nightmare. My heart was racing. I felt cold sweat trickle down my brow. My brain was ragged and shot. I heard the sound of nails on the chalkboard echoing through the hall, leading to the bridge. Reality was setting in. I took the pulse rifle in hand and let go of the fear. Tonight's story was day 9 of the 13 Days of Halloween, and was written by the talented Serafin The Midnight Bard, and was titled Visions in the Void. If you enjoyed this story, please check out his channel. His links will be in the description below. Hey, did you know I have merch? Yeah, crazy, right? But I do. And if you would like to walk around representing my realm and gaining me new travelers, the links will be in the description below. As always, I'd like to say a special thank you to my lovely Patreons, to 42 Reads, Rando Calrissian, Pam, Serafin The Midnight Bard, Creepy Clown Girl, Mia Mina, Philia Noctis, Hair Raising Narratives, and Spooky Boo Scary Story Time. If you'd like to join these lovely travelers but are light on my fire, you can do so by becoming a Patreon as well. The support is always appreciated but never expected. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you're new, and ding that bell for all future content.
But as always, travelers, once you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.